welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Today I will be sharing my thoughts on The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. There will be no spoilers in this review. However, I will be in a spoiler-filled discussion over at Mike's Book Reviews with Mike and the other members of the Quilluminati, a book club that is the brainchild of Brian Bell. And the club also includes John from Talking Story. So be on the lookout for that discussion if you have read The Vanished Birds. And hopefully, perhaps this review will convince you to pick it up if you have not. Now, The Vanished Birds is science fiction, although I think you could also easily call it sci-fantasy or space opera. In other words, it is set in the future with space travel and that sort of thing, but there are some elements that, like magic, require some suspension of disbelief. This is a millennia-spanning story that is very much theme-driven, and I'll be talking about the themes in a moment, but it is musical and beautiful in places, but also very brutal in its portrayal of humanity's ancient tendencies of domination and exploitation and destruction. The story is divided into three parts. The first part, the first third of the book, actually it's probably more than a third, but the first part feels almost disjointed as it skips between not only different POVs, but also different time periods that are more than 1,000 years apart. This is the first indication that this book is in some ways very experimental, with time dilation during space travel and cryogenic sleep being important elements upon which the plot rests. Part 2 brings the various threads together a little bit more, whereas Part 3 is the most cohesive and tragic, though it is not quite relentlessly tragic, but I'll talk about that a little bit more. My favorite part was probably Part 1 as the more experimental part, fascinating. I found myself wondering what was going to be happening, whereas Part 3, I did get a little bit frustrated here and there, but that might also be due to the nature of humanity's relentless exploitation. And I think that Jimenez does a really fabulous job on following up on that theme, which I'll be elaborating on right now. This is a story where the colonization of the universe highly resembles the sort of colonization that we have seen here on Earth. It is brutally exploitative, and it is a situation where you have the abandonment of the Earth, essentially, in order to colonize the stars, but leaving behind the doomed poor of the Earth. The powerful corporate entities, in the case of the book, it's the major corporation that is spurring the colonization of space is Umbai. It is not only out there exploiting various planets, but they also keep the people of those planets deliberately ignorant and backward in order to most efficiently extract their resources. It is an interstellar society where the powerful and the rich profit not only from the labor of the poor, but in a very literalized metaphor, from the blood of the powerless. You have a lot of social inequality and classism being explored in here, but also freedom, the other side of that. And what is freedom? What does it entail? How does one achieve a measure of freedom in a society that is fundamentally exploitative and cruel and that rests upon inequalities? And you also have in that exploration of freedom a beautiful found family. You have a lot of really pretty cool exploration of identity and various ways of looking at identity, but partly at least looking at identity as a product of memory in a way that's kind of cool in here, in conjunction with the vast period of time that we're looking at. And so essentially, you know, what would be your identity if you were put in a cryogenic sleep and missed hundreds of years at a time and woke up and the people you knew were gone? And a couple of more themes that Jimenez definitely looks at in the story would include hybridity and also related to identity, and sexuality also related to identity. So a lot of really pretty cool, nuanced, subtle exploration of those themes. But the theme of colonization, exploitation is hard and heavy, and it is in many ways, kind of a depressing read because of that. It is very sobering, to put it that way. So be aware of that, that this is not a read that will make you feel warm and fuzzy, but it is a very necessary exploration, I think, of some things that do go on in our world and promise to continue to go on if humanity does not destroy itself. So I would say that overall, this is a very impressive debut. The characters as well. I want to talk a little bit about the characters in a very general way because I'm avoiding spoilers here, but you do have a couple, I think, very well realized characters in this book in Nia and in Fumiko. These two characters particularly are very well developed, very three-dimensional, very flawed, and very conflicted. And I think that's where a lot of the interest in the story lies, is in seeing the decisions that these two make in terms of their relations to the other characters around them and their relations to their loved ones, their family members are pivotal in here as well. We're talking about a lot of trauma in the case of these two characters. We're talking about characters who are very flawed and make some very flawed decisions, but also are capable of love. So it's really an interesting exploration in terms of those two. You also have the character Aro, upon whom the plot really rests in many ways. This character was a bit more remote, but still very interesting, I thought. And a lot of the side characters were well done as well. They played their roles very well, I thought, in the story. But overall, I think this is a more idea-driven story than it is a character-driven story. And once again, it is haunting. This is a story that I will be thinking about for a very long time. I think my thoughts will be returning to the Vanished Birds again and again as I ponder humanity's place in this universe and whether or not we're capable of overcoming our destructive tendencies, which may result in our own destruction. So I thought that Jimenez did a really great job in provoking thought. And also there were some beautiful moments in here. It is both sobering and beautiful in places. And that's a kind of read that I really feel like if you're in the right mood for it, it could be a real win. So that is it for me for now. Until next time.